All right, well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity to share the city's draft bike plan with you. I would like to share why a bike plan for the city is important and our process for creating the bike plan, and give you some opportunity to ask any questions. So switch. So Bothell is a crossroads at the northern end of the Lake Washington between King and Snohomish County, with access to two major regional trails. The Bothell citywide bike plan will provide guidance for current and future generations to expand and encourage bike use. Cycling is important for our physical and environmental health, as well as economic benefits by providing more options for employees and customers to travel safely. So Bothell already has some great bike infrastructure, like this protected bike lane on the left side downtown, where bike riders are separated from the major automobile traffic by a row of parked cars, curbs, and landscaping. But like most cities, Bothell also has some places that bike riders avoid or need to be more careful, like this section of Bothell Way, which is basically just a roadway shoulder. The Bothell bike plan won't make the rest of the city look like downtown, but it will help to identify priority areas for improvement and over time close the gaps. This will make it easier for people to safely move around the city without a car. And for this presentation, we'll be referring to bike lanes in the generic sense to reference some sort of a bike facility that you would ride on, because there are several types of bike lanes you'll see in our plan, such as shared use paths or trails, raised cycle tracks, which are protected from traffic, and also buffered or standard bike lanes, which are not protected from traffic, but help drivers and bike riders know where they should drive or ride. Next. So here's why bike lanes are important for everyone. They make it safer for people driving cars, fewer crashes, slower speeds, and less congestion. Bike lanes help to designate where cars and bikes belong. They enabling safe bike routes make the city more inviting to a wider variety of riders, and is better for personal health and the environment. Bike lanes and sidewalks bring more customers to businesses and make the community a more attractive investment for businesses that are considering expanding or moving, by offering a viable transportation option to employees. Safe transportation options provide economic opportunity for people who can't or don't drive cars. They help people not only get to shopping and other businesses, but they also help people get to jobs. Bike lanes can connect cyclists to the wonderful nearby regional trails I mentioned earlier, which lead all into downtown and to our local businesses. Next. So before we dive into the plan, I'd like to take a moment to talk a little bit about terminology. So bike lanes are any path on a road that is restricted for bicycle travel only. Sometimes they are in the same roadway as motorized vehicles, and sometimes they aren't. As I go through the next few slides, think about the routes you would ride a bike on, and what you would make you feel more comfortable riding them. Next. So protected bike lanes are simply bike lanes that are separated from other users of the road by barriers, landscaping, or both. For the Bothell bike plan, the protected bike lanes will come in the form of a trail or a separated path, or raised cycle tracks, which are sidewalk height and a line between the sidewalk and the landscape buffer, like the one shown here on the right. Except ours will be one-way directional, not two ways like the one in the picture here. A separated, next slide, sorry. Separated bike paths or trails don't typically share any space with motorized vehicles, but often allow pedestrians. The Sammamish River Trail, as shown here, is such a trail. Next. A Sharrow is marking on the road like the one you see here, and it tells cyclists and people driving cars that they must both share the same lane. Along with bringing driver awareness that bikes are around, they also help bike riders with wayfinding on routes through neighborhoods and the neighborhood greenways, for example. Next. Here's an overview of our bike plan process since 2018 when we started this. The initial plan development happened between 2018 and 19, but public engagement paused due to the pandemic. And development of our draft bike plan happened between 2020 and 22 with more detailed review of the potential projects we wanted, some cost estimates and some gap identification, as well as a level of traffic stress analysis. I'll go into that a little further. We are currently in the process of reviewing comments and recommendations from stakeholders and the general public to incorporate into the final plan. The final plan development will occur between now and August, and it will include comments from city officials and professionals, the Bothell Planning Commission, general public outreach, and then we'll incorporate revisions in the program and policy recommendations. Once final, we will submit the plan to the city council for review this fall for approval and ultimately inclusion into our City of Bothell comprehensive plan. Next. So where are we now? The City of Bothell's existing bike network has these two regional shared use trails that provide the primary cross-city spine bike facilities. The total length of existing bike lanes or bike routes within the city limits is currently about 12 miles. In addition to the two regional trails, the secondary bike network spine connections include Bothell Way, Bothell Everett Highway, a north-south route, 228th Street, east-west route, and Main Street Beardsley Boulevard, which is also an east-west route that goes by the University of Washington Bothell campus, Cascadia. These corridors currently include standard bike lane facilities, but are not fully connected along those corridors. In the initial public outreach, the city gathered feedback from the community to identify existing conditions, barriers, and gaps within the current bike network and how it could be improved. And we identified existing bike lanes and paths, as well as the gaps. I'm sure bike riders in this meeting can think of places where a bike lane ends or where they no longer feel comfortable riding after riding safely on a bike lane or a path. Next. As part of our analysis, we looked at where reported crashes have occurred between January 2016 and July of 2021. We found there were 20 crashes during that time, primarily occurring at intersections, with only 4 crashes having serious injuries, but no fatalities, which is a good thing. Next. So when cycling in an urban environment, we all have different comfort levels. Some of us are comfortable riding only where there are no cars, while others may be fine riding with traffic in the street. As we created the bike plan, we tried to create a long-range plan with a network that can be used comfortably by bike riders of all ages and abilities. Next. So thinking about different kind of cyclists you can see that bike facilities and the types of riders they attract are related. Shared use paths are attractive to almost all riders because they're safe and away from the stress of the traffic. And this relates to something we call the level of traffic stress, which you can see is on the right side of this graphic. Next. We can determine the level of traffic stress of existing roadways and whether or not they have bike facilities. You can see that the majority of neighborhood streets, which are the green streets in this map, have a level of traffic stress ranking of 1, or the most highest comfort level for bike riders. Vehicle traffic in these areas are generally well separated from the bike traffic, and bikers have plenty of room. Moving down the scale to a ranking of a level of traffic stress 4, or the lowest comfort level, are the streets in red, where there is generally higher vehicle traffic volumes, higher speeds, and little to no separation between the vehicle and bike traffic. Next. So what about the bike plan? The goal of this draft bike plan is to establish the infrastructure so we can start applying for funding to build it out. Feature elements that still need to be worked out in this living document are topics such as wayfinding, education, enforcement, like storage, maintenance, name just a few. Next. Don't worry if you can't read this on your screen. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. But part A of the plan identifies the ultimate bike facility network. That's our vision for the city in the long term. And this network will be developed through major road improvement projects and as private development occurs. And although some standalone bike projects have also been identified, for example, of a private property along 228th Street redevelops, it will be required to redo its frontage to include a 5-foot protected bike lane along with the sidewalk and landscaping. But this will only occur along its property frontage. If the city can find additional funds, the property standalone bike projects could occur sooner. And because of time and resources required to build out the entire Part A plan, we propose to connect as much as existing network as possible within a 25-year period or shorter, hopefully, by filling in gaps in the existing bike corridors. In Part B of the plan, those improvements are intended to expand the network by funding projects to fill in existing gaps in the identified bike network to provide as much connectivity as soon as possible. So let's take a little closer look. Next slide. Some of the major projects shown here include the 228th Street corridor. It's the east-west route in purple there. The Bothell Everett Highway and 9th Avenue with the protected bike lanes. And then a big project, the WashDOT Express Toll Lane project, which is in the center of the map there, will ultimately provide a new connection over I-405 with protected bike lanes. Next slide. And the predominant projects here, this is the south end of the city, include the Bothell Way widening project, which is under design right now. The Wayneta connection to Kirkland and the East Riverside Drive Trail to Woodinville. Next slide. This is again the north side of the city. This is our Part B improvements. This close up of the north end of the city with Part B improvements. We want to point out that the 228th Street corridor is no longer included as a Part B project and is now identified as a Part A standalone project. Also, we are still considering whether or not to put Cheryl's on 9th Avenue as an option before ultimate improvements get put in due to higher traffic volumes and speeds on the street. Depending on the feedback we get from everybody, the proposed bike facility types in Part B may change, but the identified corridors that they're on will likely remain. Next slide. In this shot of the southern end of the city for the Part B plan, some changes have already been identified from our stakeholder meetings, including the removal of most of the 80th Avenue corridor you see in the west, on the left side, which is actually located in the city of Kenmore. So just a little cleanup here we have to do. And it shouldn't be part of our bike plan since we're not building that for them. Also, the Valley View road corridor is a local street connection from campus, University of Washington campus, that goes downtown. And it will be added as a neighborhood greenway. And neighborhood greenways are basically low traffic, low speed streets where bike riders will share the roadway with cars.
So we wanted to pause and see if folks have any questions after seeing this part of the presentation before we break into breakout sessions. Please drop any questions you might have in the chat.
I do have one regarding the Sharrows. Was the city residents or community members, was it surveyed as to if that added like a level of safety to them or perceived safety level to them, like by drawing those Sharrows on the pavement?
Wait a minute, what was the question again? Sorry, Julio.
So for Sharrows, my understanding, they're the images that you draw on pavement, correct?
Yeah, it's a legend that you paint on the ground, right?
Okay, so were people surveyed or were like community members reached regarding as to if they felt any sort of safety or comfort using that? Like, does that add to a sense of level of safety to them?
I think, yeah, that's a good question. The Sharrows are, they're meant to, let drivers be aware that there's going to be bikes there, and like I said, helps people wayfind. Like once they're off of a bike lane or a designated, corridor, they want to turn down a local street. It helps to make sure that they know they're still on the bike route to go to the next corridor, let's say, or something like that. And that's what the purpose of them for, but there is some studies that indicate that that's kind of provides a false sense of security for some riders that are inexperienced possibly and think that, this is I own the road now. So again, we have to be careful where we put them. It's not, and really it's not going to be used as, as often as we thought we would do it, just because, again, that kind of, it's almost sometimes better to do nothing basically instead, on a local street.
Okay, and those are part of Plan B, correct? So in the initial plan, that's what's gonna occur first, is the Sharrows and other projects?
Well, in our Part B, it's a flexible plan, so we can do, wherever. We'll have to see where the city council takes us and how much funding they want to put at this, where a lot of the connections and this, low hanging fruit projects, I'll say, can be done if we do like an annual budget for the bike plan. But we're going to be actively pursuing those Part A projects too. Our public feedback so far is a lot of people want a new corridor, protected bike lane that goes north-south throughout the whole city. So, they feel like a couple of those projects are more important than just doing the quick connections that we think the gaps are in. They just want something that's going to be a little more expensive, and we'll just have to see how council and planning commission want to handle that.
Oh, okay. And then just out of curiosity, is there any like major concerns that you've been given, like with the feedback? Like what's like one major thing that like the community's letting you guys know about the bike plan, if you don't mind me asking?
Nothing major. I think it's just kind of a direction right now is that's kind of our biggest challenge right now, is to figure out what projects to bring forward first, and how much we want to spend on that. There's some details, smaller stuff, but nothing major that I'm happy that we covered a lot of routes and stuff. But most of the comments have been, thanks, and give me a protected bike lane to ride my kid on. I could bring my kids on. That's kind of what we're hearing a lot of. But there are still those people that say, hey, just give me some connections so I can get to the trail, And
Yeah.
so there's two thoughts, and we have to look for something that kind of goes from not both one end or the other, but something kind of in the middle that we can reasonably fund and build.
Thank you for that. Does anyone else have any questions for Sherman? Let me
Hey,
check.
Sherman, I had a quick question, and maybe you mentioned it in the beginning, but what's the bike ridership in Bothell? Like, is it a significantly large amount, which is why the bike plan is kind of trying to be implemented?
Yeah, there's a big bike community here. It's just, it's because it's so accessible from, from the Burke Gilman Sammamish Trail, that we're right on it. So very easy for people to, travel into Seattle on bike or go to the east side through Redmond and wherever. So, it's a pretty big bike community, and it just, yeah, they want more. We implemented the plan, or we're implementing or developing this plan because, we just want to catch up. Our original bike plan had, identified every street with, your normal standard 5-foot bike lanes, and the standards and the types of facilities being built are so much different now that we have to, update that and think about where we could put a safer network and different, thinking that what different types of bike lanes we can put in and use, utilize that new culture. So that's kind of why we did it.
Thanks, Sherman.
Mhm.
Okay, Sherman, Bill is asking if the maps are currently available.
So the whole plan, draft plan right now, Bill, is available on our webpage, and you can review, which has all the maps in there. If
Okay.
you need additional or something, don't have access to that, let me know and we'll figure out a way to get that to you.
Okay. And then we have a question here. Why is 101st Ave Northeast not part of the current bike plan? It's an easier road to ride up than 104th Avenue Northeast. I can pull up that section of the map. Should I pull up section A, part A or part B, Sherman?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, the southern section there. The question again is what could you?
104th. The person was wondering about why is 101st Avenue Northeast not part of the current bike plan? It's an easier road to ride up than 104th Ave Northeast.
The reason that's not in there right now is because it's basically we're in the downtown core, and we haven't really identified a particular path through the downtown core, although I've had that question asked already. We may be considering, what the best route is through downtown and make some designations there. But at this point, once we felt once you got into the major downtown core, we didn't want to specifically designate anything because it's all low speed and anybody could pretty much ride a bike on any downtown street safely within the street. So that's basically it.
Another question, has elimination of on-street parking been considered for ease of bike lane addition on existing roads?
There are certain corridors in the city that we did identify where there is parking in potential conflict with providing a bike lane, for example, or bike facilities. And that is something that we would love to get feedback on. And ultimately, before we finalize the plan, we'll probably go to those specific neighborhoods where those corridors have that kind of a conflict existing, and find out if they have those residents particularly that have frontage with parked vehicles and is also considered as a potential bike corridor that they would rather see one way or the other. But at this point in time, we're assuming, I think we're going to assume that we want to leave the parked cars just for the convenience of the communities there. But that could change. I mean, depending on what other people want to see, you know, along their frontage.
Okay. Another question, speeds have increased and congestion has grown with development adjacent to 100th Ave Northeast. Has installation of one or several stop signs been considered to discourage higher speed through traffic and allow safe crossing? Is that on this map?
100th, I'm assuming we're talking about 100th in just north of downtown. Is that the 100th we're talking about here? As far as that goes, we're not at this point considering additional stop signs, but this seems like and as far as crossings go, we have that, we do have that, you know, the lit crosswalk, I guess, or the signed one there at Stipec Park. And there is potentially a crossing a little bit north of there so that people can use that one existing trail next to Lake Pleasant or the water there and get back to the east side where there's where we're considering putting another shared use path that will take you further north, because that section of 100th is just too narrow to add any other kind of bike facilities on there.
Okay. I have a question about 102nd Ave Northeast. That bridge on 102nd Ave Northeast has consistently aggressive drivers that are not aware or choose to ignore the road that is to be shared. What enforcement mechanisms are projected to improve this? So 102nd Ave Northeast.
Yeah. That's a good question. We'll have to consider that one a little bit more. I'm not sure what, you know, I'm not sure what what actual speeds are there and, you know, how aggressive people are driving, but, you know, that's a tough one to, that we'll have to kind of take a look at a little closer. It's a good question though.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have a great answer for that.
All right. And a question about the time frame of the plan. With climate change driving a more rapid drawdown on fossil fuel usage, zero fossil fuel emissions within 10 years, 25-year plan seems too late. Why have more aggressive measures such as closing some streets to traffic not been considered?
Again, that would be a question that we would have to, that we're not considering at this level of a bike plan. That would be something that would have to be answered probably on a council level as to whether or not, you know, how aggressively we are pursuing this plan and how much funding we can afford to move ahead with it.
Okay. Ryan is interested in the Brickyard Road Bridge and when that might happen. What's the time frame on the Brickyard Road Bridge?
That's a good question too. The Brickyard Road Bridge is something that is, I believe we've considered that in our capital projects. I know that is we're aware of it, but I'm not 100% sure of when the timing of that project is.
Okay.
We'll get back to that person on that answer.
And yeah, I know at the end of the session we have your email address. So can people email you with some of these questions too?
Yeah, that would be great. Okay. Thank you.
Here's another question about enforcement. The lane on 104th Northeast near CPMS is blocked most of the time. Cars are frequently parked in bike lanes, is what this person is asking, and wondering if there will be any enforcement around that.
That's I'm sure that is occurring for the school pickup time periods, et cetera. And yeah, that we'll have to work with the school district on how that we can make that work better. From an enforcement standpoint, that is something that we can look at in terms of expanding this bike plan. There's a lot of other non-infrastructure questions and programs that we need to consider down the road. Enforcement is definitely one of those things, along with education, teaching people not to park in bike lanes, et cetera, as well as wayfinding and bike storage, for example. So,
Okay.
yeah, that's going to be worked out with the police department and school district together.
Okay. And I think one last question before we move on to breakout rooms. Donna is asking, do I understand correctly that Plan A, this one on the screen here, oops, north and south, is a patchwork approach that will rely mostly on private development? This sounds like we will end up with spotty bike infrastructure on different sections of the same road. How will the city decide what and when to fill in? What areas of the city will be prioritized?
The prioritization of those improvements are based on the prioritization criteria, which we use to look at all of the improvements, the Part B projects anyways, that basically connect to, well, one is a safety issue. If there's a safety issue, we need to look at that first. Connectivity, where there's obvious gaps that we could easily, make improvements to, or, connections to underserved areas is something we're also considering, as well as to parks, schools, and even very important is connections to transit routes, so that people can use this as a multimodal means of transportation. Those are the criteria that we use to prioritize each route, and that is also documented in our plan. So basically, the ones that scored the highest from that criteria will be our top, basically our top projects to try to implement. But the way this plan is built is so that we can be, very flexible. We're looking at it so that, if there's an opportunity from a road project or a development or anything, that we can implement any part of the plan while we go through that prioritization list. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, thank you. We did have one more question. Have you considered narrowing lanes, I assume narrowing traffic lanes like car lanes, to both calm traffic and create more space for bike lanes?
We have considered that, and it is a trend to do that nationally. The width of our travel lanes in the city is going to require a different process outside of the bike plan that will require a review of design standards overall, that we'll have to take a look at from almost a separate effort. And the main thing on the lane width is that we have to just consider larger vehicles, school buses. Our school district input from the school district has been that, we really want to make sure that our traffic lanes are wide enough so that the buses don't have any issues for school buses. But definitely narrower lanes slows down traffic, provides a little more pavement to, to accommodate bike facilities if possible, if and when possible. So I think the determination of the lane width right now, we're on the premise, and the way we base this development of this plan is based on our current design standards for roadway widths, which is 11 feet as the minimum. So if we were to look at a revised plan, using narrower travel lanes, then that would have to come with an approval of the new design standards first. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to have us move into our breakout groups, just so we keep things moving. Thank you so much, everybody, for some really great questions. And thank you, Sherman, for some terrific answers. Let me check in with my co-host. Lawrence, are we ready for breakout groups?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so real quickly, if anybody would like to have a breakout group that's conducted in Spanish or in Mandarin, please note that in the chat now, and we will make sure to get you that service in the breakout rooms, and you'll be able to have a conversation, the same conversation everybody else is having, but in Spanish or Mandarin, okay? So just drop that in the chat. But otherwise, let's go. So what we're going to do is we're going to have 15 minutes. We have 3 questions we wanted to ask everybody attending today. And we wanted to hear from you in smaller groups. The city was really concerned that everybody's voice is heard. And so we're going to be breaking into groups, and we will see you back here for a quick report out, and then we will wrap up the whole conversation after that. So it'll be just a 15-minute breakout session, and we'll see you right after that. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. Nobody left early, so I assume that means you had some really good conversations going there. That's great. Let's see. So let's do some quick report outs. Let's start with Dave Boyd. Are you ready to do a report out?
Sure. Whether ready or not, I'll dive in.
Sure.
So a small group, we have 4 people. I guess they probably were all similar. So in terms of what would make people ride more in Bothell, one was just more comfortable connections. It wasn't missing connections, but just making the connections we have more comfortable, more protected lanes, and a definition of a protected lane of something that will stop a car from intruding in that lane. So not paint, not plastic candlesticks, but at least a curb on lower speed roads and more on faster roads. The things that would keep people from, or the destination, there weren't specific destinations, but that were identified so much as the level of risk being the main factor, particularly along Bothell Way. The general lack of good connections, well, generally north-south and particularly south of the Sammamish River. Comment that Sharrows are actually worse than nothing, that their citation that they're actually less safe than no markings at all. And then connections from the Burke-Gilman Trail to Wayneta are lacking, and also concerns about connections from the Sammamish River Trail to downtown are not as good as they could be. And in general, some concerns about what is the intention for bike traffic through downtown. I know that It's the idea is that all of the downtown streets should be low speed traffic, and a feeling that there might need to be a little more thought given to that. And then there were comments about the quality of the North Creek Trail, that there are sections of it that really are lacking. And then the last one, general comments. I guess I covered kind of in this. Final one was think about protected routes through intersections, not just up to the intersections.
Okay.
How to do that.
Well, thanks, Dave. That was terrific. Appreciate it. Okay, I know Nathan had a room and Eddie joined him. So Nathan and Eddie's room, what would you like to tell us about?
Yeah, I can kick us off and then pass it to Eddie. With regard to question one, our attendees felt that the plan it's a really good outline and a great plan, but they wanted to hear more about funding and some of the maintenance that's been contemplated for existing facilities. As you know, they realized that maintenance costs money as well, but they wanted to hear if thought had been given to that and if maintenance has been prioritized at all. We did have some concern for safe routes for families and children, and one of our attendees was advocating for making sure that we're connecting our neighborhoods safely to some of the main routes, so that our children can have safe routes, not only to school but also connectivity to their own neighborhoods. With regard to question two, there were some places where our attendees felt a little unsafe and unnerving, and one was by the Fred Meyer at Maltby Road. On that route, there's a separated bike facility, but it still didn't really feel too safe with cars buzzing by pretty quickly, and we wanted to know if we could elaborate on that a little bit more. And then also on 88th approaching West Hill Elementary, the lanes are pretty narrow there, and our attendees felt like some more attention could be given to that area as well. The last one I'll mention is one of our attendees thought it was sort of called out on our on the Plan B part, I believe, and I think it's south of 224th. I scribbled down my notes pretty quick, so apologies if I got the exact location wrong. But there's a sort of a bump out on that facility that's not exactly intuitive and can make it pretty dangerous when you're riding on that facility, and the connectedness isn't there as good as it could be, and so they felt like some attention should be given to that as well. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Eddie, see if I missed anything there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Nathan. You pretty much cover. I just have a couple of added notes to that. One is that it's important from our group to really prioritize protected. So I think there's a common theme to provide protected bike. Also to consider traffic calming as part of the, as you do those, you need to consider traffic calming in the sense that you want to be able to calm traffic down. So it's not just talking about bike. So that's an important element to that. Another areas that was of concern was 240th on the sort of the west side of Meridian, where it goes to Shelton View, and that's a really rural roadway. And there are a lot of families that are trying to get kids to that area and out and in. And so we should think about some of these areas that are connecting to schools to make it safer for the family. So very much so to ensure that when we build out that, to consider those things. trying to think about climate change was an important piece where we're looking to make bike an important piece of, important part of mobility, which is kind of shifting the mode from driving to bikes. So that was a piece that will help the climate change issue, which had been talked about earlier. So that's sort of my additional notes on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. That was great. And Nathan. So if I recall correctly, Steve and Sherman were in the same room. Would one of you like to report out?
Yeah, I'll start with, and then Steve can fill in if I miss anything. We heard that we would like some sharrows on the 102nd Bridge from Riverside to Main Street and along 96 connecting the Valhalla area to the basically the Burt Gilman Trail. So for that section there. We also heard make some improvements more along 100th Avenue north of downtown and actually through downtown along 101st to put some more focus again. And I heard this just a second ago about a little more direction through downtown. Mentioned that earlier. It's something that we should consider. We also heard that we don't think that sharrows, and this is just again another repeat of one of your comments from the other group here, that sharrows are not preferable, and we should focus more on providing for the protected bike lanes, another common theme, as well as looking at more traffic calming along those bike corridors to slow down traffic. Some of the more dangerous or more unsafe areas that people would like us to look at is crossing of North Creek Trail at 405 interchange there, going across 195th, particularly on the east side of the interchange, potentially considering signal, maybe advanced signal, bike signals to help assist in that. And also crossing Bothell Everett Highway over 405 through the interchange there going north. It was also a very hairy section of town, and what we could do for that. Let's see, felt got comments that felt the draft plan is written well. Consideration of the level of traffic stress is understandable and helps to identify which improvements and what improvements needed is very helpful to understand how the plan was developed, and that we need to push hard on education so that we can encourage more bike riding and more bike riders, more participants, by educating them to how to use facilities correctly and ride it with traffic or without traffic, and things to look out for. It's the other thing was that we need to look at how to enforce where parked cars are parked in bike facilities and try to figure out a way that we can discourage that. Specifically, the location we were talking about was but Canyon Park Middle School, where parent pickups are parking in the bike lane and occupying that space. So, it's that's a discussion that we said would need to occur between our police department and ourselves, Public Works, as well as with the school district. So that's kind of the notes I had. Steve, you want to add anything?
Nope, I think you're pretty comprehensive. Our group had 3 people. They were all sounded like very comfortable, avid riders. So it was great input. We appreciate it.
Thank you. That was really great. And it's, I think, Emily, have we talked to your group yet?
We have not. Jason, can I pass it over to you to start and I'll fill in?
Absolutely, no problem. We had a group of 2, plus Emily and myself. The comments on the first question were better connectivity and definitely feeling safer in whatever bike facility we have, whatever that was, but feeling safer. Little bit of concerns about maintenance of infrastructure, like after windstorms to get the bike lanes cleared. Intersection safety is also to be noted in that it's a dangerous area and need to be addressed through the plan and the routes. And then also having some bike parking at the destinations. Regarding the second question about areas we can't bike to, it was more routes that are avoided and where we don't feel safe. Those routes were the 102nd Bridge, East Riverside Drive, Meridian, and Bothell Everett Highway coming into downtown Bothell. And then just more safe lanes around schools, and connecting to the current bike trails with facilities other than just bike lanes. And then lastly was the North Creek Trail, where it crosses across 405 on 195th, was a little sketchy, to say the least, with all the off ramps and on ramps and high speed and large high volumes there. So, and then regarding our third question about some general comments, they both thought 25 years is a really long time, and they'd like to see it shorter to implement the plan elements, and maybe an idea of what it's going to look like in 5 years and 10 years down the road. And they'd like to make sure that public education is in the plan, some sort of safety courses for kids and adults, and definitely an enforcement component to go along with the education. And just a personal note from one of our participants that they lived in Amsterdam and were not avid bike riders when they moved with kids, but after being there with a lot of safe facilities, they lived there for 3 years, I think, and never owned a car and were able to bike everywhere, and everybody felt safe. So build the facilities and they will come. So that's about it. Emily, did I miss anything?
You covered that very well. The only thing I would add is a mention of bike lights at intersections.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jason and Emily. We're doing okay on time, and so I just wanted to, it looks like we got 2 more, I think, quick questions here. Sherman, can we just ask you a couple follow-up questions?
Sure.
And realizing this might not be a bike plan question, because oh, okay, no, it is. Minimum 12-foot lane for co-use of parked cars and a bike lane is too narrow considering risk of car doors opening. Is it possible to make 15 feet the minimum? So it sounds like that's both the parked car and the bike lane combined. Would it be possible to make 15 feet the minimum width?
I guess I will just say that, you know, our roadway design standards are set, and I mean, for specific types of roads, whether they're local streets or they're a collector corridor or major arterials. And We don't have any parking on major arterials, but for our collector corridors, there's a standard right now that either with or without parking. And if it does allow parking, I'm pretty sure that it's beyond the 15 foot. So I'm not quite sure I understand that question. I think if it is an existing 15-foot street, parking would be pretty challenged to put to be there unless it's just a local road that a local street, you know, that allowed parking from, you know, that's basically been grandfathered in there. I would say that would have to be looked at on a case by case basis almost, but the road standards we have are still, you know, what they are. And again, to look at the bike plan in terms of, you know, the trade-off between parking versus a bike facility is something that we kind of still want to reach out and look at specific streets that have that that would have to make that choice or would, you know, prefer one way over the other. So I don't know if anybody, Steve or Eddie, want to chime in on that from a capital standpoint. You guys can help, but that's kind of my understanding of it right now.
I'll chime in. I think if I understand this question was about if there's a travel lane, then you need to have bike lane, then you need a 15-foot lane is what I think it's trying to say. The problem like we have talked about, or at least it's been brought to our attention, is that can we consider narrow lanes because of trying to calm the traffic? So we got to deal with that part to ensure that we're not pushing one and then causing another problem. So certainly it will be a consideration as we build out those, whether we end up with Sharrows, which will then be, you know, not, from what I heard, is a concern. So those are my thoughts as to what that was referring to, and certainly something we will have to look at it because there are existing roadway. People are thinking, why don't you narrow it down so that, you know, costs will slow down? But then when you add more pavement onto it for bike, then you end up with a wider lane. So that's the challenge that we're trying to find the right balance for the type of volumes and the type of speeds and the type of characteristics for that particular roadway. So those are part of the safety consideration we're going to be developing for different streets and trying to get something that will meet the needs as we, you know, move forward with this. Good point, good questions, and we'll certainly be considering those. Thanks.
Thank you.
If I could add one more thing. These are great points, and as you all know, they're kind of interconnected because the streets are multi-use. What we're hearing is use of traffic calming, potentially narrowing roads to get speeds down. We're also hearing, on the flip side, potentially protected facilities to get the bikes off the road so that more users, the non-comfortable users, would also use the facilities. So one opportunity I want to highlight is starting later this year, early next year, there's going to be a comprehensive plan update, and the transportation element will also be updated. And that's an opportunity to look closer at roadways and bikes and pedestrians as a whole. And so that would be a great time to participate as well. I think Sherman right now, we've heard things like education and enforcement, and we understand those are all part of the plans. And I think Sherman's first step is try to identify a network, which we can start funding and getting grant funding for to try to beef up our network. I think the next step is to work through the comprehensive plan to try to get everything melded together and address some of the other issues you brought up. And then as we continue forward with our living document, so to speak, we can add elements to our bike plans, such as education and enforcement and those things. So again, I want to make sure that you understand there's opportunities to address those things that you're bringing up as well. And it's not necessarily going to be specifically the bike plan, but it'll be in a broader planning exercise.
You're muted, Whitney.
Sorry. Thank you. So thanks, Sherman, Eddie, and Steve. We'll just do one more question before we wrap it up. And it's about road construction and how it usually prioritizes rerouting cars and not so much bicyclists. So the questioner is wondering about, when you're doing updates as part of the Bothell Bicycle Plan, can there be some priority for bike rerouting when there's construction?
That's a good question. I think we definitely try to, when there is construction, you know, we have to consider alternative routes for pedestrians, sidewalk, you know, accessibility, and you know, we'll have to look at how bikes get through construction zones a little bit better. I guess we'll have to something I'm not sure how to answer that question as well as maybe these capital guys.
I'll answer that question. I think that's a great point, and I think that will be brought up in our team meetings, and we will highlight that. So that's a great point.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I'm going to share my screen again. All right. Thanks for some great questions and answers, everybody. That was really terrific. And I wanted to highlight some next steps. You can see on the slide that you can submit written comments until May 31st. The planning team will review your comments and during the month of June and integrate them into the bike plan. That final draft of the bike plan will go to the Planning Commission on July 20th. And then it'll be slated to go to City Council in the fall. As I mentioned earlier, you can email Sherman Gong at that email address you see on your screen, but you can also find it on the website at the URL you see there. I had a quick ping from the mayor who said he just wanted to say hi.
Hi.
So, hi.
Hi, Whitney. My name is Mason. For those of you who don't know, I'm the mayor of Bothell, and I just wanted to say thank you to all the community members who took time out of their evening to come give feedback tonight. And a lot of what we heard from you is really similar to the policy direction council gave last month, especially around protected bike lanes, repurposing parking, and narrowing lanes, which is something we can do through the comp plan alongside the bike plan that the bike plan obviously will get adopted into eventually. It's really cool to see community input be so similar to the direction council wanted to go. And I'm super confident our staff is going to take your feedback, ours, and bring us an updated plan that looks a little different with more protected lanes, connectivity, and bigger, more ambitious projects. I'm pumped to work on advocating for grant money or finding city money in the budget to start to build some of the really cool, bold, ambitious projects that I know is coming back in the final draft of the plan. So thank you to everybody who came out here tonight. I just wanted to say I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate it too. Been some great input, some great questions, and thank you all so much for coming out on a beautiful day. And I'm pretty sure most of the people who are here tonight would rather be riding a bike than sitting in front of a screen for another couple hours. So we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to all the city staff and Sherman for some good presenting and for everybody who attended. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.